Welcome back to another episode of Logistics Remix. Today's guest has spent over 2 decades shaping how enterprise shippers automate parcel delivery. Justin Cramer is the co-founder of ProShip, one of the industry's most recognized shipping software companies used by retailers, manufacturers, and 3PLs to process millions of shipments per day across 4 continents. He's been involved in over 300 implementations, guided product evolution across multiple generations of carrier integrations, and helped position ProShip as a leader in high-volume, multi-carrier shipping automation. Justin, it's great to have you on the show.
Tamara, thanks for having me. I always love to join podcasts like yours.
Awesome. Well, I was excited and I was looking forward to this conversation. I think we've got a lot of topics to cover. And let's dive into it. Let's start here. What I want to start with is the early days. So, can you take us back to your early career and what inspired you to co-found ProShip?
Well, so basically, I started off straight out of high school directly into the Navy. I was lucky. I had great aptitude. Maybe not great training, but great aptitude. And the Navy said, "Hey, you know what? You'd make a great nuclear machinist mate," meaning that I operated all the fluid systems, so that's steam and water side for the nuclear power plants. Okay, it was very foundational for me and what I was going to do long term. After I did that, I got out and I ended up in a legacy shipping software company. Many of you may still be running that software because the foundations of that software have been pretty good and have continued to run for years. But there's a saying out there: employees don't quit companies, they quit bad managers. Okay. Um, Execution was a big problem at this company. And so me and a couple other co-founders decided, you know what? We're going to take a gamble and we're going to take the engineering team. We're going to separate it from the sales team. Right. That did not work out well. That leapfrogged us, though, into starting our own company with a primary concern about the quality of the deployment of the shipping software.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, by the way, thank you for serving. Uh, yeah, and so was this like a meeting at some diner and back of the napkin kind of conversation, or tell us a little bit more about how the idea got started and what was day one like?
Well, number one, first, it's the fact that logistics is so interesting. It always changes. Just when you think you've created a great solution for a challenge, the next challenge shows up. So if it wasn't for the fact that the logistics is so sticky, right? We never would have gone to that Irish pub. We never probably would have had just one too many extra whiskeys. And we probably never would have said, you know what we should do? We should start our own company, right? But fate is what it is. And so 4 of us decided to start off with a middleware product, right? To a front end that could connect the enterprise software stack together. Basically, the concept of thinking about what is the overall system back in 2001? What is the overall systems that are being used in enterprise shipping, and how do we best move data inside of it? And I'm going to tell you that for the last 25 years, that's all I've done is thought about what are the systems that are available and how do we move data within them to execute shipping at a high enough speed to meet everybody's requirements.
Well, I hope you have some other hobbies, but because this is definitely one that could take you down a rabbit hole and keep you thinking all day long. So from that original vision to where the company is today, how have things evolved? Can you walk us through the couple of decades
Yeah.
journey?
So a lot of this can be solved just by looking at what our mottos were. When we first came out, we were for integrators by integrators, and the idea was to try to create products that were flexible enough that if you were stuck at a warehouse, it's 3:30 in the afternoon, you're on the West Coast, so all your support is now already taken off for the weekend. do you have the ability to solve the problem, even if it's a little bit of duct tape and baling wire? Do you, as an engineer, have the ability to solve the problem for that customer, get them shipping, and maybe fly back in a week or so to apply that? Because this was back when a lot of end of day manifests were still done by a modem. Okay, so literally there was a U.S. robotics dial-up modem, and you would hear the squealing and all that. That would mean that your end of day documents were being transmitted for you. So that's really where it started. For integrators by integrators. As we move forward, we looked at, okay, well, there wasn't so much the IS field we thought was going to be around. So we had to make the product work better for us and our customers. So we went speed, compliance, support, right? Speed. Because we write engines, shortly after we started writing engines, we added speed. We write engines. They're the fastest in the industry. They are what we refer to as platform engines, meaning we don't have to go out to carrier APIs. Compliance. Well, if you write your own engine, you have to have a way to update it, right? So you have to make sure that you're always compliant, because though many carriers are very profit driven, so they will take anything that's close enough. There are some carriers like the United States Post Office which will return an entire trailer to you if they don't like the color of the stock that they've been printed on. Okay. And a lot of people experience that in the 20 aughts. So, and then support. We basically feel that support starts from the way you architect the software to the way you implement the software. And then of course that just rolls into the continuous life cycle of the software itself. And that's something we continue to look at today is how do you build software that is either that provides health checks for itself, that does all these things. So if we can catch things at if we look at green, yellow, red, right? Unfortunately, too often in your enterprise software stack, you catch things at red. How many more things can we catch at that yellow light, correct them before we actually stop shipping? Okay. So that's a big part of it. That was the idea, be it speed, compliance, support. Now we talk about the last shipping software you ever need. Why? Because we can scale from a few hundred packages a day to customers who will ship more than 1 million packages a day, customers who will ship more than 100 million packages in a year. Okay. So really, once you start to build in all of these useful features to the product, once you think from a support side first as you deploy and as you build, now all of a sudden you can think scale. How do I become the last shipping software you'll ever need? So that really that really comes down to a huge amount of what we're trying to do. So there's a lot of things where we isolate concerns. We do a continuous integration, continuous development cycle, CI/CD. Anybody who has an Android or an Apple phone, you see CI/CD all the time, right? If you're an Apple user, you pop up, all of a sudden you see that little timer go around as it's updating your products, so on and so forth. Why if it works in the consumer world, why wouldn't that work in an enterprise world? And basically, since 2005, that's the way we've thought about it. Is there should only be, if we're going to go back to speed, compliance, and support, what's the easiest number of versions to support? One, right? So if you don't have 5 versions of the software and you're not like, oh, well, this is from 2013, so we're going to have to use these things. And if you don't have 5 versions of software, it automatically becomes easier to support because there's only one version of the software. So just a lot of things that we've looked at, a lot of growth, and we're not done, right? We are really looking to continue to revamp the software as we go forward and make it even easier to get that compliance and support out of it.
Yeah, and talk about like making changes for someone that's shipping 1 million packages a day. I mean, that operation probably can't even go down for minutes if you think about it. I'm just
Exactly.
doing the math in my head in terms of how many packages, how many labels they have to print.
Exactly. Yeah, and let's face it, though, you could look at any piece of software and realize its maximum capacity cost across a 24-hour day, but we all know that there's going to be peaks, a couple hours after a shift starts, maybe an hour or two after lunch, or the break meal in there, right? And so if you're not able to surge to that peak human efficiency, now all of a sudden you are the weak link in the system. So you gotta be able to keep up with those people.
Hey, just one step back. When you started the company, did you ever expect that you'll have shippers doing 1 million packages a day? Did you ever expect you'll have hundreds or, of enterprise clients? Like, what was the expectation?
The expectation was always that we would grow it as big as we could. We wanted to be critical to the carriers. We wanted to be instrumental to very large companies. Me and one of the other co-founders said, you know what? I'd rather be an 800-pound tuna in the ocean rather than being a 20-pound goldfish in a 10-gallon tank. Right? Sure, you're a 20-pound goldfish. You're the biggest guy there. You run the place, right? But I would rather be in the big scary ocean and be that awesome tuna that has real control, real power, and is so much more content with its life than something trapped in a little fishbowl.
I like that analogy. Speaking of growth, yeah, I mean, you've been involved in, I think, 300 shipping software implementations. Like, are there any lessons that you've learned from those projects that you could share with us?
Absolutely. Three of them: systems thinking, isolation of concerns, and data flow inside your enterprise software stack. Okay. Systems thinking. I always mention my time in the nuclear navy. Why? Because we had to know systems thinking. We had to know if somebody goes and turns off this breaker, tell me what the next 24 hours of the plant is going to look like. Is it going to scram the reactors? Is it going to boil this off, break this piece of equipment? What is the cascading set of events that's going to occur? So when we're looking at shipping software and we're doing international shipping or we're doing hazmat shipping, where is the data coming from? Is there multiple sources of the truth, right? Isolation of concerns. Um, uh, if there is multiple sources of the truth, now we have a potential cascading failure issue. Because if source A is updated and source B is not, okay, now we have a problem where, do we know what the truth is? How does the software know this, right? Um, if we're trying to ship high speed, several thousand packages an hour, do we have that data staged in a data repository that can respond fast enough, right? Do the APIs take half a second? Well, if you have a conveyor-based solution that only allows you 1,500 milliseconds, and you've just taken up 500 of them, okay, the printer's going to take a certain amount of time. The network's going to take a certain amount. So really, you have to think about the whole system. You have to think about what each product contributes to that 1,500 milliseconds, right? And well, again, that's why we look at platform-based engines, um, because it does allow us to shrink the amount of time it takes to evaluate the carriers, so that we can expand the amount of time we can execute customer business rules, right? Tamara, you are a platinum member, right? So we're going to give you free shipping, and we have told you it's going to be there tomorrow. Okay. Now I have a warehouse in Houston. Okay. Is Houston a 1 day delivery to Austin? Maybe. The software knows. Let the software handle it, right? You still get the expectation that you expect, but that's why you're a loyalty member to that retailer. You get that expectation. The retailer hopefully gets a ground shipment cost, right? So that's kind of the idea: is you have to have all of this data come together at the right time, quickly, so that we can make a decision and move that box now onto a trailer and get exchange custody. So that's a lot of what I think about all the time is, what are the parts? How does the data flow? And do we have any duplicate systems of record?
Yeah, and really what you painted there is this picture of systems, right? Systems thinking and kind of knowing where your failure points could be, because when you're making decisions and based on milliseconds, I mean, you could have failure points throughout the entire anywhere in the entire cycle. So figuring out I think math is really important there. Logic, these business rules are really important. It, and and talk about carrier integrations. So I want to touch on that a little bit. So, like with carrier integrations from the early days when you started, um, to like today, like there's been an evolution, and I'm wondering like if you can talk about like what are the enterprise shippers demanding today in terms of carrier integrations? How have things evolved?
So basically, our customers are demanding more choices, right? And they want to evaluate as many things as possible, as close to real time as possible. As we look in an afternoon and let's say our first trailer pulls, let's say it's the United States Post Office. It's tomorrow for the United States Post Office. Can I still ship packages on there and still have them hit customer expectations, or do I need to express them? Right. In order to do that, we need a lot of information. We need to process it quickly. Now, and again, that's all because we want to use every choice we have in the warehouse, right? In order to hit that balance of expectation versus cost, right? So, anyways, as we're looking at that, um, platform engines, I think one of the things that's come out as the APIs, as new carriers have come out of the pandemic, and we have so many more choices now, is that there is a massive difference between the amount of carrier effort necessary to just expose a carrier API, which may be at the 800, 900 millisecond range, versus provide a company like us with the information necessary to create a platform-based engine, which again doesn't have to leave our operating system. We can do it right there. And generally we can do that at sub 100 milliseconds. But that's a lot of information that the carrier has to give us in order for us to be able to understand the rating, routing, the services, um, they have any zone exceptions. There's all of these different things that are necessary for them to document and then have the appropriate end of day API for us to send information to so that we can be completely asynchronous from that ship and execution process. Okay. Not only does that mean that if we've installed in a warehouse, are we backhoe resistant, if you will. Okay. And I have had a lot of customers where that has happened to them, where some maintenance in the street, across the street from them cuts fiber, and now they have to switch over to an LTE or something like that system. So in that case, hope things are getting better. Infrastructure is getting better, which is making that less of a concern. But I've experienced it, so I can't help but talk about it. But as you're going through this, um, it's just because the platform engines continue to persist because the APIs still have their limits. Those limits are tested every time or every fourth quarter. They always are. Okay. Most carriers handle them well, but that may mean that they've doubled their transaction time. Is that something your workflows can handle? If you have automated print and apply on conveyor, that would mean you may have to dial down the speed on that conveyor. And every warehouse I've ever been to, they keep that speed just under where the boxes will start launching off at the corners. Okay. A couple of them may bounce, but they're going to stay in there. That's all they care about. Right. So that's really a question, especially for our higher end customers, is will the solution be fast enough for your automation? And I'm going to tell you right now, for stores, we use APIs all the time. Okay. They're quick, they're easy. A lot of them support dynamic origin, dynamic destinations, all of these other things. So it just makes it a lot easier from a compliance standpoint. But that fails as we start to get into, all right, we want to do old school waving, we want to do high speed batching, we want to do mechanical solutions in the warehouse to move our labor from physically applying labels to everything else in the warehouse that still truly requires human labor.
Yeah, and you brought up a couple of things. I think it'd be good to like maybe define some of this for the audience. Not everyone's as tech savvy as you, Justin, and I understand a little bit around the edges as well on the technology, but I think it would be good to like talk about some of these architectures, right? So there's the API architecture, there's the on-premise architecture, and then there's the hybrid of the two. So since you mentioned API and I think on-premise, like, can you describe like the different approaches a little bit more in detail, and like as enterprise shippers are thinking about okay, which one is the right for me? Like, how do you guide them down that path?
Okay, so this isn't fully first principle thinking, but it's pretty close. And the first principle is, how much of your shipment execution process do you want to be able to control? If you are using a carrier API, you have no control over the speed or uptime of that API.
And the API is
The API is that's the software messaging process, if we will, right? I'm gonna take this down a little bit, but basically, let's face it. When we send data across, that data is basically saying, "Hey, I'm coming from this location. I'm going to that location. I have 3 pounds of items, and I want to know what these services will be." Okay, just 4 pieces of information. Okay, and then in response, it's supposed to say, "Okay, here's your cost for service A, B, C, and D." Unless you said, "Hey, ship it with this one in your data set," in which case it says, "Here's your tracking number, here's your label, and here's all of the other costing information that your accountants probably really want, or your auditors do, one of the two, or both, right? Here's all that information that comes back as it's necessary for us now to hand that label to either to a user or to a printer applicator to apply that as necessary. So the API is just a way of communicating directly with the carrier, and again, directly with the carrier. It is outside of your control and is outside of our control. Whereas with a platform engine, we've worked with the carrier and they say, "This is how our logic works. This is how we want you to respond." And once you've shipped a package at a different point in time, you can gather that information and you can asynchronously send that to us. So in a platform engine, you have control over the platform. Okay. You can say, "Okay, I want to put more RAM on that. I want to put more CPU on that. I want to have multiple servers in order to ensure that if I take one of those servers down for maintenance, I have a lot of backup available to me. I want to be able to add servers right before I go into peak so I've doubled or tripled my overall capacity in line with my expectations for peak." Right? Platform gives you control and responsibility. Platform gives you control, whereas the carrier APIs transfers that control to the carrier and also transfers some of the responsibility to that carrier's.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, so it sounds like with the API, from what I understand, my system is sending a request to the carrier system and then getting a response back. That response may have a label with the tracking number, everything I need, in all the other details, and then I'm able to print that label. With the platform, or I call it on-prem, that's where I configure my own servers inside my distribution center. So I'm not sending anything outside of the four walls. So travel is much faster because it's all inside my distribution center, and and so I'm more in control, right? So now I've got to set up 1, 2, 3 servers. I can have backup. I could have load balancing. I got to ask you something though. What about a hybrid solution? Are you seeing shippers implementing hybrid solutions, and how do you guys support that?
We're recommending hybrid solutions. As I mentioned earlier, if you're if you're a company that has DCs and stores that you're shipping from, is it possible to ship from a store using premise engines? Absolutely. But again, remember I said using a platform engine moves some responsibility and requirements to you. Okay. By the way, that platform engine doesn't have to physically be in the warehouse. It can be, we do private hosting. You can have it. Most of our customers are no longer in physical hosting. Okay. We do have a couple legacy customers that you could walk through their data center, but most of them are going to be in Azure, GCP, AWS, things of that nature. And so some of them did have a little bit of problem a couple days ago. But when it comes to that, going back to it, the hybrid solution really is about the pros and cons. The cons of a platform solution when you have 4,000 stores is you have to put all that information in there. There's a lot of that end of day data exchange that we do with the carriers that requires security. Okay, that requires handshakes. This is going to create a bill for you. Okay, whereas and each carrier does that unique. Whereas APIs nowadays, they have a standard RESTful JSON, right? Maybe an OAuth security token to go along with it. The industry kind of forces predictability in the APIs, thereby reducing overall configuration. But you have a shared resource with millions of other businesses. And if they all hit at the same time, well, I'm sorry, you still just have your packet request and you have to wait in line. Okay. Now, waiting in line at a store where to me, an absurd amount of time is 2 seconds, right? But to an operator in a store, 2 seconds is nothing, right? They probably just sip their coffee. There's the label. They're pretty happy. 2 seconds in a conveyor solution is not the right solution. 2 seconds in a auto bagger, not the right solution. Okay. And even 2 seconds if we're doing some type of a waving process, that compounds the length of that wave and can thereby reduce the amount of orders that are available for the pickers to pick at any point in time. Not always the best solution. So it's not about platform is better, API is better. One of them fits certain problem sets better, and the other one fits other problem sets better. So by using them, the right ones for the right problem sets, and that might be using both at the same customer. Okay. As a matter of fact, one of the first things we ever hybridized was postal shipping, where we have our certified premise solution, and we can rate from that, like I said, sub 100 milliseconds, but then we would execute via carrier API. So now you don't have to, especially during peak time, you have a little bit slower execution, almost fast enough for multiple conveyors, but you never have to worry about how fast the first half of that process goes. So think about the whole system, separate the system into the appropriate parts so that you don't conflate your problem sets. Okay, there's some times where you want to put those problem sets together, but there are some times where, you know what, you have to treat a car like a car and a motorcycle like a motorcycle. They do the same thing in the end, right? They take you, get you from point A to point B. But you know what? If you go into your car and you start pulling your foot up to switch gears, bad things are going to happen. Probably you in a wall, right? So, and that's the idea is you want to apply the problem set that is required for that problem set, not conflate them.
Yeah, no, thanks for walking us through that. That's, I think, really helpful. And you get to see, I mean, you get to see not only the technology evolution and how in technology architecture, how that's solving problems, but you're in the parcel world. And so you're seeing what's happening in the parcel market. So I just wanted to pick your brain on like some of the most significant shifts that you're seeing that may be top of mind in the parcel market right now.
Yeah, when I first started, shippers considered themselves multi-carrier if they used UPS, FedEx, and the United States Post Office. Okay. Now, if you only have 3 of the big ones, you're leaving money on the table. You know that there are certain regionals that will help, not massively, but incrementally change the cost to expectation model in certain regions and for certain types of customers. Okay. Are they capable of completely replacing your national carriers? No. But I think that's a big thing, right? This brings me to the second point, not just the sheer number of carriers that we have to deal with now, but the process that we refer to as rationalization of those carriers, not just diversification. Because, well, you can just add carriers, that's diversifying. But if you just add stocks, I'm sure that your financial advisor is going to tell you that's not really what you need to do. We don't just randomly pick letters and buy things on the stock market, right? You have to rationalize them. You have to look and go, does this new carrier actually provide me backup for that region? Does it provide me lower cost for a similar service? Does it provide me unique features for my customers for a decent price, right? You really want to rationalize how well that carrier is going to fit into your mix, not just see who all we can cram on the bus. Because unfortunately, if you do that, it's going to be harder to find an answer for that problem set that you pass your shipping software. Okay. So carrier rationalization is a big part of it. And then finally, and I feel like a broken record here, right? The sky is falling, the sky is falling. Um, I've been saying that same day shipping is going to take hold any day now. Okay. What we are seeing is that we are out of a lot of the proof of concept phases that we saw in the early 2020s, and we are seeing a slow, more deliberate rollout of same day services. They're coming, but it's not. It's definitely not something I would call viral in the uptake, right? But it's just a slow, continuous march. About 10% of our customers find some way to include same day shipping in their processes.
And just to define that, same day shipping, are you referring to an order comes in today at 11 a.m. and it gets shipped out by 5, or an order comes in today at 11 a.m. and gets delivered by 5? Can you put a
Delivered,
definition on that? Delivered
delivered the
in the same
same
day,
day I ordered it.
ordered and delivered in the same day.
Exactly, exactly. So, this is going to be your DoorDashes, your Ubers, your Roadies. There's been a bunch of them, and actually we've seen entire large companies show up and go away, right? So there has been some volatility in there, maybe not virality of the solution, but there's been a lot of volatility in the same day market. But again, we do start to see, because, well, let's face it, most people live in cities, and most of these, especially uh, the crowdsourced same day solutions, if you're in a city, you have access to the people who are going to do the last mile for you. Okay. And the software is relatively straightforward to say, hey, go pick this up from Macy's and deliver it to that suburb, right? That's pretty straightforward. Now, depending upon what it is, certain stores that have higher end items are the ones we're seeing do that, right? Because if I do have something that I need, let's say an auto part, well, when you need an auto part, you need an auto part. Okay. Odds are you're either going to have to get an Uber yourself and go and get it. So probably might as well just rather pay that Uber to bring it to you. Right. So, we are slowly seeing, like I said, an uptake of that. Again, the feedback we're getting is it's not like 30% of their shipments are going this way, but most of the shipments that are going that way, they might have lost if a customer didn't have that choice, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And to do that, to achieve that, they have to have a location with the item and inventory to be able to ship same day and deliver same day. So you're talking, probably within 30 miles or so, or 50 miles from
And
the
going back to
origin.
systems thinking, right? This is why a good OMS is part of this solution. Shipping software isn't everything, right? You can't just, as much as I would like it, you can't just go out, buy shipping software and have a great company. Okay. You have to have your ERPs, your WMSs, your OMSs. And especially for same day shipping, that OMS is key, right? Understanding, like you said, where is that inventory? Also looking at things like boomerang times. Is that store overbooked? Are we going to have to move it to a store that's on the other side of town? If we have that many stores, right? That's another big if. Okay. Same day requires a pickup time, not just a delivery time. So we have to know, okay, so it's let's say it's 11 o'clock in the morning. Do I have enough time to get this thing packed so that it can be picked up at 2, so it can be delivered before 5? So it's a little bit more complicated, but we are seeing the carriers try to make it as simplified as possible. The stores starting to, or not the stores, but the customers, the shippers starting to see how they can use it. And of course, the shipping software has been just sitting there waiting to try to take advantage of being able to go, hey, Mr. Customer, I can offer you same day shipping for the price that the shipper has asked us to calculate, or you can get next day shipping tomorrow for another price, right? And so that gives you, again, to you as the recipient, to go, which price is worth it to me, or do I just want to drive to the store, right? So I mean, it's still
Exactly.
possible for employees or for customers just to BOPIS these things. Okay.
Yeah, and you know what? A couple years ago, I had to order these AirPods from Apple, and I
Mm-hmm.
was actually surprised to see at checkout that they offered same day delivery. It was delivery from their store, and I think it was, it was under $10. And I thought, well, am I gonna get in the car and drive, 10 miles, 15 miles to
Mm-hmm.
the store, or am I gonna just have it delivered for under $10? And I needed them that day, and I think delivery was within 2 hours.
There you
I
go.
was
Yeah.
I think that was my first experience with a packet, like an online e-commerce delivery same day.
Yep. And well, nobody who works for Apple can say they work for Apple. But yeah, that's one of the things that they look at is yes, a product like earbuds, they're $250 product. They're something that, like you said, if you break one, you lose one, something like that. Having it same day is important, but it's the middle of a workday. How much loss do you have? How much opportunity loss do you have getting in your car? Oh, I forgot that road is under construction. Now I'm stuck because I turned too late. What was supposed to be a 20-minute drive is now an hour-long drive. Yeah, there's a lot to avoid that opportunity cost. So,
I'm with you there. I I actually think, and I don't know if we want to go dive into this topic. This might be for another podcast. But now you're seeing drone delivery being tested by Amazon and DoorDash and Zipline, and you've got food restaurants that are testing it for delivery. You got Walmart that's testing it, of course, Amazon. Um, Talk about fast delivery. I think some of the time they're delivering in under 30 minutes.
I really like Zipline's model. Zipline has been around for nearly a decade. They started off in uh, delivering medical supplies in the vast open areas of Africa. So they've been a profitable company. I like their mothership and baby drone. Keeps the noise at 400 feet, and all you have is that little baby guy there, just trying to make sure that it lands on the delivery point, if you will. Of course, there is a problem with that. You can only fit something so big inside the delivery drone itself. Okay. Um, but yeah, we all know this is where it's going to get. What we don't know is when. Okay. And I'm going to say that 100% there. We don't know when this is going to happen. All of them each have their own advantages and disadvantages. Like I said, I've been a fan of Zipline for a long time. I think that their model, the fact that they're wanting to put these motherships basically to dock on the side of buildings to recharge. So if you order a pizza, there might be four of them already docked there, and they can just put them out into the individual slots and off they go. This makes a lot of sense to me. Now, mind you, when I was a kid, the Jetsons was a big cartoon, so it feels a little like that to me. But I can see how it happens, and let's remember, a drone doesn't have to cross a bridge over a river. It just goes right over the river wherever it needs to. A drone doesn't have to go to 5 points, right? If anybody has a city with an intersection called 5 points, they know what I'm talking about. Okay, this is the worst intersection in the entire city, and you do everything to avoid it. Drones don't have to worry about that, right? And as we start to create the appropriate rules, a drone must be above 300 feet. Why? Noise pollution, right? Must be above 300 feet, so on and so forth. It will start to become a convenience. And of course, as the cost of these drones comes down due to automation and abundance, right? This is one of those areas where if I'm Uber, if I'm DoorDash, um, I have to know that things that are under 5 pounds and within, a cubic foot eventually are no longer going to be part of my. I'm really going to have to fight to get those packages, right? Because drones will be significantly better set up for them, is my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good space to watch. Would love to have you back once you have some experience ordering a burrito and delivered by a drone. Maybe you take a video and let's have you back on the pod to talk about that delivery and kind of what we're seeing in the space. But I do think over the next couple of years, I'm with you. I think they're doing a lot of testing. Several companies in the space. There's there's some regulatory things that are in the way that I think are getting cleared and crystallized, and we're going to see more adoption of drone delivery through the end of this decade.
A couple hours north of you in Dallas, they are actively delivering food via
Yeah.
drones. So yeah, very interesting. I don't know if I'm ever going to get it down here in Florida. We're a little too spread out, right? But I look forward to it. I think it's going to be very interesting, and it is probably one of the most exciting things that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, let's talk about something else that's happening in technology, and that's with the AI. And so I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on like where do you see shipping automation headed next, and what role is AI going to play in that evolution?
Okay, so with this, I always like to preference what the purpose of AI is versus the purpose of what's known as discrete computing. Okay, discrete computing is where we calculate an answer. Okay. So when you go to a checkout counter, that's discrete computing, right? There's only one way to add those numbers up. There's only one way to properly apply all of the federal, state, local, city taxes to that. There's only one answer. And if you get that answer wrong, the IRS is probably coming to have a talk with you as a vendor, right? So, on the other hand, there are probabilities, and probability is where AI is it's really what it's for. It is to look at probabilities and provide you with the most probable answer. Okay. However, unlike we humans, it can do it off of massive data sets. Its ability to leverage all that, see some of the nuances in it, and actually provide multiple responses or multiple guesses. Because let's be real, it's truly a guess. This is the uh, um, the AI phenomenon of hallucination is just a bad guess, right? So, anyways, as we look at this from a shipping standpoint, and we look at what we need, right? Routing, that's discrete. There is only one way to say, okay, this is zone 7, and therefore it's going to cost X per pound. Okay. Labeling, discrete. Again, the carriers very specifically want data in specific areas. The cost, the rating, discrete. Why? Because, like I said, there's only one way to calculate that bill. And UPS is the United States Post Office, especially, companies like that. They're not going to be like, oh, we see how you kind of sort of rounded that. No, there is no rounding. Okay, you have to put the roundings in the exact right spot, or you're going to get pushback, right? And you're probably going to get fined. On the other hand, the actual time it's going to take to get from the warehouse or the store to the recipient, that is highly probable. There's a huge amount of probabilities that goes along with that. So as I see it right now, WMS, lots of areas for probabilities. Put away, pick, all of these other things, because the way a person can go through a warehouse, it's just, there's so many variables there, right? So you have to just use probabilities on that. When you get to the shipping software, everything with the exception of time in transit is discrete. And the time in transit is an area where we see the need to be able to accept whether it's customers fed AI, whether it's third party AI, or whatever the case may be. That's an area where it's going to take effect. That's where somebody with a lot of AI knowledge, and let's face it, a lot of data. Okay. So somebody who's already been tracking for 10 years, it would be the perfect data set. Combine that with some NOAA data. I'm in Florida here, been a very good season. Okay. No, knock on wood, no hurricanes yet, right? Season's over in a month, so we're looking pretty good. But that being said, will a hurricane cause it? And when we're in the winter, the ice storms that sometimes streak across the Midwest, how do they affect delivery times? Right? As we go to peak, are we taking into account that the carriers have always modified their networks, right? And how does that affect? How are our early signals going to affect mid-peak time and transits, right? So there's all this data that needs to come together. And I think a shipping software at a minimum has to have that ability to just bring that data in externally and you real time execute it as part of its decision making process. So does a shipping software have to have the AI for that? No, but it has to be able to accept those alternate time and transits so it can take most advantage of all the certified discrete rating, routing, and shipping processes that it's worked with the carriers so hard for. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
them.
Sorry, sometimes I get a little
I
deep there.
no, it's good. I think it's an important topic to talk about. I mean, no one has a crystal ball, but we are seeing AI and how it is beneficial to so many tasks, right, and so many operations and so many job types. Um, and so I think it's going to be important to watch the evolution. I also think I don't know. You're curious on your thoughts here. Whether systems we talked about the API, which is the integration with the carriers, whether the carriers are going to open up some sort of integration for AI models to integrate. Like one of the things that we saw recently in e-commerce is we're now seeing Chat GPT uh, have the ability to search an e-commerce website that's powered by Shopify and make the recommendation for the item to purchase, and you can click the buy button. I think eventually, maybe today or maybe eventually, you'll be able to actually check out within ChatGPT. So I'm seeing some of these things play a role in how AI is being implemented in e-commerce. But do you think there's going to be some kind of AI implementation with the carrier soon?
Absolutely. And assuming is a relative term, but here's what I'll say. One of the more recent advances in AI is the creation of the uh, MCP standard. Basically, think of it as APIs already allow us to send questions back and forth between two pieces of software. An MCP basically tells an AI, "Hey, here's what I do. Okay, I am a set of discrete and or hybrid technology, and I, in the case of shipping software, can allow you to rate from point A to point B, use these carriers, produce the appropriate carrier documentation, right, and so on and so forth." So it's basically it's a an instruction set meant to be consumed by an AI like ChatGPT, Claude, so on and so forth.
So
And you're
is
going
this the API version for AI? Basically,
basically,
instead of
yes,
using the API, they're going to use like MCP, which I think stands for model. I'm looking it up here. Model Context Protocol. So
yes.
it's the API version, but specifically for the large language models like a ChatGPT to be able to talk to.
Exactly. So think of it more like a tool. This is the way I look at it. All right. So an LLM has a lot of power and a lot of capabilities to break out jobs and then work each of them separately, often sending those to specific agents. Right. So like I said, your agent may be another LLM specifically tuned for, like, let's say legal, or one specifically tuned for to turn everything into Shakespeare speak, right? Whatever the case may be. But as we start to look at things that are more useful, you might have a tax one, you might have a shipping one, you might have all of these extra parts. The ERP may have one as well, right? And so the idea, if we are truly going to create AI solutions that execute on an enterprise level, they need access to these tools. So the MCP simply provides a way of plugging these tools in to your AI model of choice. And so when it needs to do this, it will actually be able to go, okay, I know the tool that's necessary for that. The tool has self-described itself to me, so I don't have to go in and I don't have to do this in my instructions. I think that's really important because right now, those of us who are heavily using AI, I'm always in my instruction set, fine tuning and trying to get better results out of it. And if I try to add a tool to it, I have a whole nother set of instructions that I have to add to it, right? So self description and self advertising of those features is huge to an AI because now this lets, like I said, either other AIs or complete sets of discrete logic become available to it to make decisions or to execute solutions.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's basically AI talking to another system, and it really it's going to understand the instructions that that system requires for that AI to
It's
interact.
it's the
Um,
robot finally picking up a hammer, setting it down, and reaching over says for a set of scissors, right? They're just tools.
I love it. I think it's going to be interesting. Listen, I think we can go on and talk about like what the future is going to look like. But what I actually want to take you back because I think hindsight's 2020, right? That's the saying. And if you could, I'm curious. So you've seen a lot, right? So if you could redesign enterprise shipping from the ground up, let's just say like start from scratch, maybe the short version, like what would you do different this time around?
Okay, this assumes I'm in control of the carriers, right? Which clearly I'm not. Okay. I would make their input outputs the same. One of the reasons why it is so hard to judge a carrier just off of its functional merits is because, quite frankly, each of them have different technical merits, which sometimes overrides their operational merits, if you will. Okay. So if there was just a set of standards, this is how we do rating, this is how we do zoning, this is how we communicate at end of day, this is how our API is going to look, right? That would, I mean, honestly, would put me out of a job, but it would, it would simplify this process so much. I am only here because the carriers have made it too painful to connect to more than two of them without hiring dedicated body or bodies to do so. Okay. Because their feature sets are not advertised in a common way that allows that would allow it, like an AI, for example, to understand the differences and take advantage of them. Because of that lack of similarity in the technical connection points, products like mine and others have to exist. Um, we would want again, we want to break this out. So pricing was done one way, accessorials were understandable. Okay. Let's just leave it at that. Dim pricing would be the same. Labeling it would have commonalities, and all this. So it would really we would just want to make it more approachable and more predictable. That being said, I mean, clearly I'm here because they haven't. Okay. So this is a, multi-million dollar problem that the carriers existing has created because they really don't want to get together and agree on any standards.
All right, so you're basically giving me a model to replace what you started,
Hmm.
but it okay, I like it. You're at least you're being honest here. At
Look,
least you're
hey,
being honest.
from an engineering standpoint, it's the right thing to do, right? From a business and sociological standpoint, it's never going to happen.
Yep, I doubt they're gonna all get together tomorrow and agree on standards.
Yeah, we got new carriers
That
coming in already. Amazon is just going to make everybody that much more angry with everybody else. So it's going to be interesting.
it's definitely yeah, it's never boring in parcel shipping world. Let's listen, I've had you here for a long time. I want to end on this. I want to go talk a little bit about like your core philosophy or your mindset that's guided you throughout your journey building this company, and like one that still shapes how you approach challenges today. Can you speak to that?
in a word, systems thinking. To take that deeper, it's really about investing the time to understand the system as it sits, and investing the time to truly understand the problem. Okay. And often the problem that is presented to you is not the problem they need to solve, but it is a symptom of the problem that needs to be solved. And only by understanding the limitations of the current solution, understanding the limitations of the current architecture or the entire system, if you will, can you help somebody with a problem refine their problem to a better problem and then solve it.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think that's great. That's a great insight. For anyone, I think it applies not just in parcel shipping, but across every business and in every function. The problem that you think is the problem may not be the ultimate problem. It may not be the root cause that's causing the problem. Well, let's leave it on that. Justin, thanks so much for joining and sharing your insights on ProShip's journey and the evolution of enterprise shipping. Where can people learn more about you and ProShip?
Well, of course, you can go to proshipinc.com. That's where you'll find everything about ProShip, or you can just Google ProShip. I'm also on LinkedIn, the usual linkedin.com/in/Justin Cramer. That's Cramer. You can find my personal LinkedIn there. You can also find ProShip on YouTube at proshipinc.com, or ProShip at ProShip Inc. is the handle for us there. And look, you can I've recorded a lot of these things. I've tried to share the knowledge that I've been fortunate enough to gain over the last 2+ decades, and I'm going to continue to do that. That doesn't mean I know everything. More than happy, reach out to those of us at ProShip. If you have more questions, ask. This is how we learn, because we're willing to get those questions and understand, is that question the real question, or is there a deeper question that will actually really help raise the value of your company?
Awesome. Well, thanks for everything you guys do at ProShip and for starting this company. I believe it helped a lot of enterprises execute and build their businesses, because nothing happens until you got to make the sale, but nothing happens until you deliver that product to the customer. Thanks again, Justin. Listeners, as always, subscribe to the Logistics Remix channel on YouTube for more conversations that make sense of shipping. Give us a like on this episode, and thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing you next time.